Okay. We're gonna start this up right now. This is my little weird show thing, and on here I have Ben Scrivens. I'm probably
Scrivens. Yep, you got it right.
okay. I got it right the first time. Perfect.
Yep.
So if you're not aware, this man makes a lot of clothing that covers your bodies with beautiful horror designs. Growing up for me, the best thing I could find was like a lame, half-assed Michael Myers or Jason Voorhees at a Hot Topic or Spencer's. So, in 2003, you made the company and then started busting out these shirts over time, which a lot of us really appreciate because again, we would just have very garbage options back then. you know. Um, did you? I mean, here we are. You realize that in about a year, I think you're at like what 20 years of Fright Rags, right?
Yeah, next year will be 20 years. It's crazy.
And I'm not asking you to kind of explain your company because I think you've done that every
Sure.
year. So I think it's better to look, to the future. Like, do you have any big plans for next year? That's the question because you're hitting 20.
Next year. Honestly, first of all, nice hoodie, by the way. I appreciate that.
So I just rolled out of bed. So I'm like, let me grab this and put it on because it's cozy and it works.
Perfect. As far as for next year, well, it is, speaking of, you are wearing some Halloween gear there. It is the 45th anniversary of the original film. So we do have quite a few things in the works potentially for that film. I know we do release a lot of Halloween related items. It's pretty much known by anybody who's even heard me talk for 2 seconds that Halloween's my favorite movie of all time. But it's not even just that. It's a lot of people's favorite movie and it's a lot of people's loved movie. So that's one of the reasons why we keep developing things for it. And honestly, it's fun to do it. So, but we are planning on some things for that film in particular next year. Other than that, I mean, we've always got things planned. There are a few things in the works. There's one deal that we finally secured. Well, we had the before and it took a long time for us to renew that we finally got, but we added some new categories to it that I'm really excited to work on. I don't want to give too much away right now, but it's a fan favorite. I will just call it, it's how do I want to say this? It's, one of Romero's beloved films that we're going to be able to get back in the sandbox again and work on some really fun stuff.
See, it's not really giving away because that could be any films because a lot of us, Day of the Dead, Dawn of the Dead,
yeah,
Land of the Dead. You never know.
Right.
Definitely not.
I also don't want to jinx it. I just don't want to jinx it either because there's a lot of work we have to put in development and it all has to get approved. And so I would love to just spill the beans, but I also don't want to jinx it because then I don't want it to say it and then I'd not be able to do it. I mean, we should be able to, but things happen in the licensing world. It gets crazy.
Speaking of one thing I was going to ask you, what was like the most hardest license for you to get? The one that you just like had to work so crazy hard to get?
Honestly, and again, I don't want to keep beating a dead horse, but Halloween was, and I'll tell you why. Because, when I first started the company back in 2003, I didn't know anything about licensing. I knew that I had to get licenses, but I didn't know how that worked. Funny enough, my first license I ever got was, I want to say October of that year. I mean, like within a month. I think it was within a month that I started the company, and it was Sleepaway Camp 2 and 3. And that was because Michael Simpson, the director, owned those movies. And I got in touch with him and he literally faxed me an agreement over to my old job that I could sign and fax back. I mean, we're going back, right?
Fax machine, crazy.
We actually still have that license today. It's the longest one we've had. But my point is I would reach out to companies and people and ask. And again, I knew nothing about the process. So when they would bring up terms like advance or minimum guarantees or all this stuff, I would have to literally learn all this stuff on the fly. And so anyway, around 2004, 2005, I had reached out to Malik Akkad, who runs Compass International Pictures, who, of course, Mustafa was his dad, who produced Halloween. And it's funny, I put this care package together. We had done this really limited shirt of Halloween. It was like just a poster art. that I had separated into like 4 or 5 colors. We did literally 31 shirts. I sent him one, and this letter, it was a nice package. The funny thing is, I sent him a bootleg shirt, that I did. That's kind of probably not a good thing to do. I knew it was risk, but he said, look, you can't sell this anymore. I'm like, no, well, it's already been sold. I only sold 30 of them. It's not like I made a ton of money. But we were talking, and we were kind of getting somewhere with it in terms of maybe having a deal. And then I remember waking up, and I was still working full time at this time. I was eating breakfast, watching Today Show. It's what I used to do. And there was the announcement of his dad and his sister being killed. I think it was at her wedding, if I'm not mistaken, but there was a bombing, and I think it was horrible tragedy. And obviously, the last thing I think he's going to want to be talking about is licensing for Halloween. So I stopped all communication at that point, because what am I going to do? Like, sorry about your dad. Are we going to do a deal? Like, that's horrible. I would never do that. So it was like another year or 2 or maybe more. I revisited it, and there was somebody that was working with him that was handling this. So we started talking, and we would get close, and then that person would leave, and then there'd be a new person, and then I'd get close with that person, and then they would leave. And it was literal years of the door kind of opening and then slamming, and then door opening and slamming. And we didn't get through until 2013, which was the 35th anniversary of the film. And we were able to sign a very limited license. It only allowed us to do like 3 or 4 shirts, a couple posters. And I was over the moon when we got it. And luckily, since then, we've really developed a great relationship with Malik and Ryan, who works there too, who handles the licensing. And we work with them directly, and they've been so great to us, probably because, partly we've proven ourselves, but also I think they've opened up a bit more over the last, decade. Obviously more people have the rights. They actually work with a licensing agent for the film that gets the rights to the licensees, but we work with them directly. So we have we don't have to go through anybody else. We're grandfathered in direct. So I can just call them up and talk to them about things, which is great, So really that was the hardest, partly because it was the one I wanted the most. And also it did take several years, because I started trying to get it early enough. Whereas everything else, there's been times where it's been hard, but nothing quite like that.
Yeah, so that was, obviously, like, you have pumped out a ton of really great Halloween stuff, which NECA seems to have a really hard time getting any Halloween 1 stuff going on, which is strange. So it's really good that you were able to get, the 78 Halloween, because you were able to put out gosh, what is it?
Yeah, the rights for all the movies. Oh, thanks. The rights for all the movies are in different places. 1, 4, and 5 are with Compass/Trancas. 2 and 3 are with Universal. 6 through even the new films are with Miramax, and also now Paramount, because they bought out Miramax. So that's been kind of a thing. Approvals still have to go through, I think, Trancas in general, but they still have to look at everything, I think, for the most part, for most of the movies, at least with, I think, Miramax stuff, possibly. But yeah, we're lucky. And then Rob Zombies was with Lionsgate. So, we've been lucky to work with every single Halloween film ever made. Like, it's pretty wild. Like, it's a weird thing to think about, only because the movies are with different companies. Like, if we had, say, Friday the 13th, all those movies are with really one company for the most part, but or Nightmare on Elm Street or other franchises, right? But this franchise specifically is so broken up and so compartmentalized that it's been great to work with all of them.
Nice. One thing I was also kind of going, circling back to the whole 20-year anniversary thing for you. Do you think you might reissue your first shirt, which was the What Would Jason Do?
So
it seems fitting to do.
So yeah, so again, going back to like big plans for next year, it being our 20th, we haven't really decided in terms of the actual anniversary what we're going to do for us in terms of a company and how we want to handle that. But I will say, for the 15th anniversary a few years ago, we put up our classics designs, which brought back, I think, 1 a month we did, old shirts. Now, we did bring back What Would Jason Do, but it was the revised version, the post 2005 version, because I got a nice love letter from New Line Studios cinemas at the time, telling me that I can't sell the one that I originally did because it infringed on their copyrights. So, here's the thing. I've toyed with the idea of bringing back the very, very, very first original one with the original hockey mask, which looked more like a part 6 hockey mask, even though part of it almost looked like the part 6 at the end after he gets the thing hacked off, even though obviously that look is more part 7. I know that, but I feel like it had some of that shadowy areas there. Anyway, I kind of worry about it only because I made a decision. Like, look, we used to do a lot of unlicensed stuff, and that's just was the nature of the game, because we didn't have the money or the wherewithal to do licensing. And as we got more into licensing, after the company been around for a few years, we really started turning the ship around and doing a lot of things licensed. And then we would do some limited edition stuff that wasn't licensed because we didn't have the rights to it or whatever. But I made a decision, several years ago to not muddy the waters anymore. I really said, if we're going to, if 99% of our stuff is licensed, then why are we even screwing around with doing a couple of things that aren't? Now, sometimes you just can't find the rights holder to a film. Like, it literally, you've done all the work, you've talked to producers and directors and studios, and you think but nobody claims to own it. So sometimes we've done things in the past where I'm like, we're going to do it anyway, because literally nobody knows who owns this. So if somebody comes out of the woodwork, then hey, then we know who to pay. But in cases of something like a Friday the 13th, where we know where the rights are, we just can't get them because they're locked up at Warner Brothers because of the litigation between Victor Miller and Sean Cunningham. That even though things seems like they're starting to settle a little bit, there's no new merch being produced for Jason and Friday the 13th. So I don't want to muddy those waters by like doing that. But if we did it as a limited thing and people knew that the reason why we're doing it is because it's the original shirt, that does have a different connotation as opposed to us putting out a quote unquote Friday the 13th shirt, if you know what I'm saying, yeah. Right? I don't want to muddy the waters and have people think like, oh, you got the rights, and because we didn't, and I think, and other people do things like that, and that's fine. I'm not here to blast anybody else. I really don't care. I'm just talking about from my own personal experience and the way I want to kind of direct the company. But in the case of what would Jason do, it would actually be a fun thing to just rerun that specific one, even if it were like a day release, just to have fun because it was the original shirt. And that's the only reason why I do it. I would never bring it back otherwise.
Which, I mean, to hit 20 years, I mean, that's, definitely something which, I mean, it doesn't feel like 20 years. I think like, I remember Agreed. Back to, I had a weird small little store up on 23rd Avenue in Portland, Oregon. And I think I hit you up one day in like 2008. I'm like, hey, I want to carry some of your shirts. So that, and what's funny is I actually, Horror Hound is actually how I discovered you, which, cool. A lot of you, if you see this ad right there that you run, your ads work because that's how I discovered you. Back then.
That's great.
Yeah, no, I looked, I actually found the email, but yeah, you were really cool and worked with me on like, trying to get the stuff in there because primarily I was like a goth industrial music store. I didn't really have a lot of horror stuff, but I'm like, oh, these shirts are so awesome. Like, and there was a Brain Dead shirt. I did order the What Would Jason Do shirt. And then there was obviously, I think the They Live shirt. And then there's some really good Creep Show ones too. So that's what kind of, got me into your company back then. And then, after that, it was just buying a bunch of stuff that you keep putting out.
That's awesome.
Speaking of though, are there any, and again, this is just asking, which, you can obviously be like, can't talk about it or anything. Right. But are there any plans to bring back any more of the cards? Because these things are very expensive on eBay now. I don't know if you're aware of that or not.
It's funny. Once in a while, I'll search eBay for things just because I'm curious.
Yeah.
And then I go, wow, I can't believe something like that's selling like crazy. So I will tell you this. We are planning on some reprints of trading cards. And I will say this, though. Anytime we do reprint a trading card set, two things. One, we'll probably only do the collector's box like you just showed, the factory box, we call it, which is really the base set. And part of the reason for that is when we do the wax packs, we generally include things like signatures or art cards or something. And those are just harder to do, especially in a second run of. So I like the idea that the wax pack sealed cases are a little bit more of a limited exclusive thing, but yet for someone, even like, quite frankly, like myself, as great as the wax pack experience is, and granted, we sell them in a single pack, so you can have that experience of opening them up. Sometimes I just want the base set. Like, just give me the regular, because you know, it's what I think we sell them for, like $35.
Yeah.
Like, you can just get the base set and you pretty much have everything. Maybe not all the stickers, and maybe not, you know, some of the other things that you'll get in the sealed case, but you've got that experience of having the entire set of cards there for you, right? And so those, we intentionally stopped making them quote unquote limited because we wanted the ability to bring them back. However, even when we do that, we want to notate them somehow as a second run, whether it's a slightly different color change on the border, in the box, just so it doesn't devalue somebody who may have held on to that first run and even sold them. Now, I'm not advocating people going into eBay and trying to sell these things for crazy money. And I look, I've seen even those Nano Force and other things, even our recent Halloween figures, go up for crazy money. I'm not doing this so those people can make a ton of money. I'm doing it to reward the people that maybe want to have, like, they want to have something of value. They got in on it first, you know, like those Halloween figures, people have been waiting a year for those, a year. And if, you know, we're thinking about doing another run of them, but I want to notate somehow on the backer card saying that the second run, because it's not fair to people that waited that year to then be like, oh, I could have just waited a couple extra months and got them, you know?
Or you could just, you know, on the second run, just don't have the free comic book part.
Well, that's true. Yeah. So something like that, where again, it satisfies the customer and fan that wants that figure that couldn't get it before, but it also keeps the value of it. And I mean value overall, not monetary necessarily, but that intrinsic value that a fan or customer feels who got, I mean, I just don't want to crap on the person who waited so long. Now, granted, the wait, it wasn't intentionally a year. That was not something in our control, unfortunately, but it's, I always try to think of those things because I'm not out there just to like make more so we can make more money and do all this. I'm trying to satisfy demand, you know? And if we know there's a demand for these and there's no real true reason that we can't do more, and because we never said they were limited, we never gave a number, we never said that these are, you know, we did a limited pre-order, but we never said to people this is limited to us. Now, good example, Joe Bob figures, we did limit them to 1,000 when we first put them out, and they were sold out in 45 minutes. So when we did a second run, we changed the color of a shirt because we knew we couldn't do the blue ones again, because I wasn't going to do that to customers. No way, you know? So those are the things that we always try to keep in mind, because I just don't want to do something without thinking it through, right?
Yeah, because I was going to say, for me, I missed out on the Halloween one of these, and I went to an antique store in, I think, Milwaukee, Oregon, and there was one just sitting there, and it was $70 used.
Oh my God.
I was like, oh, I really want it. I'm going to pass on it because that's a little bit too rich for my blood, because these were like $35. And then now I'm regretting not buying it for 70 because now they're on eBay for like 100 to 150 bucks. That's why I was like, what the fuck?
Well, I will say Halloween is one that we are planning on bringing back in that style. So that's something that's already been talked about. It's in the works. We do have a new set of cards coming out this summer. Actually, if you want, I can show you them real quick.
Cool, because I was actually going to ask you if you can give me a preview of upcoming attractions, which is like further beyond.
I will. It's right over here. And I just got the samples in. We are slated to release these in July. We have not announced them yet. I don't even know if I might have teased it here and there briefly to responses to customers, but I will show you.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I'm going to buy the living crap out of that.
So the thing about these cards, and I'll show you a couple of them because I want you to see what they kind of look like. The thing about these cards is we were limited a little bit in what we could do on the cards. Now, the cards get very tricky because you want to have a 70, 80 card set, right? And the thing about that is then you really then want to tell the story of the movie in scenes from the movie. So you're taking screenshots. Obviously, there can be behind the scenes stuff and other things, but in general, you want to kind of flesh out the set by kind of telling the story of the movie. We did this with Creepshow. We were limited in how we could use likenesses. Creepshows recently, the rights have changed hands, so there's been some limitations imposed where there weren't as many limitations before, and that's fine. It happens. I mean, it's just one of the things you deal with. However, what we decided to do to circumvent that is actually make the cards in the movie look more like the comic book. So that's not really the best example. I'm trying to go through a couple here. Like that looks pretty much like the movie. You can see some half toning there. But when it gets to, okay, good example, using like Stephen King, like he looks more like a comic book draw, art, right? So this set, and then this is a good one about oh my God, what's his name? You know what I'm talking about. So that
Roach Man.
so it looks more like a comic book, but again, that fits the aesthetic of Creepshow. So it was a workaround because of limitations. However, it was one of those things where you had to get creative with it. And I thought, well, that's the best way to get creative with it because Creepshow is a comic book as well. So, but this is what the wax pack looks like. We do have autographs that will be in these. We've secured 6 different people from the film. And we have stickers. We'll do the factory boxes, all of that. And those are currently being printed. These are the test runs right now. We're waiting for some autograph cards. Once they get to the manufacturer, those all get collated, packaged up. We'll get them, and then it should be out with our 40th anniversary collection next month.
Sorry, if you could see, I'm probably drooling right now, sort of. I'm like, oh my God, I want that box so bad.
Yeah, it's exciting because this is something that we've been trying to do for a long time, and timing wasn't working out with us in terms of getting them done. I mean, I think COVID had something to do with it, but then when we realized the 40th anniversaries this year, we really gunned for getting them done and printed and out this year.
And I have to be really quick with everyone that's watching this as a disclaimer, even though he said July, just remember there's never anything, things happen. So don't be like, well, they said July. Why don't
and that's one of the reasons why we haven't teased it yet, because I mean, things are lining up to where here's the thing. We plan months and months in advance and many times. However, like for example, last August, so August of 2021, I had laid out pretty much every week's release for this year. And again, there were holes, gaps that we needed to fill, but I pretty much listed out what I thought the year would look like. And I will tell you that that's changed multiple times, even to the point where last week we had a meeting to discuss July and August and even some of June, because we had to move things around. Because what happens is you submit things for approval and they're not approved in time, or any number of things can happen. So we need to be very agile. So with the cards, I feel pretty good about it because they are printed. It's just a matter of getting the last amount of autographs, which we've been assured that we'll get them this week. So I'm not too worried about it. And then it shouldn't take too long. The one thing I will say is, unless something major happens, which I hope it doesn't, the cards might be on a very short pre-order because we will want to release them a certain day. And if we don't have them in hand, we might just have to say they're shipping in a couple of weeks, but it won't be like, a year or anything. They're literally done, and they're like 2 states away from us. So it's not like they're even, overseas or, wherever. I'm not worried about getting them. It just might be slightly after we release them, but we'll give everyone a heads up. We'll know by the time we release them, when to expect them.
Sorry, I'm just very.
No, I'm glad you're excited because honestly, I'm excited. It's funny, like it's nice to show somebody because like no one else has seen these. Like nobody has seen these except everyone in the office. But we have not. I don't even think we've teased these, and it's cool to see in person. It's always great to see something like this in person, but it's always cool to show somebody who gets it and likes this stuff.
I mean, I also appreciate that you gave me a big news thing like that. So that's
sure.
Watching it.
Happy to do it.
One thing I also kind of wanted to ask you, have you seen any good films lately? I mean, besides we, talk about shirts and merch, but it'd be good to, see what you think personally.
So, I mean, I did see Top Gun last week. That was amazing, but I know it's not horror. I will say,
Could be a horror
okay,
with Tom
so
Cruise's face.
yeah.
Think about how much plastic's in that bad boy.
Oh, I will say, I watched last night, and I know I'm late to the party here because sometimes I don't always catch things right when they come out. A lot of times that happens, and I get very behind in a lot of things. I watched Fear Street 1994. Now I know it came out a year ago. I know it's old to people now at this point, but I hadn't watched them, and I'd heard great things about them, and I just kind of, I don't know. I just sort of went, I'll see it at some point. But movies, there's like 20 movies coming out every week, it seems like, and it's hard to keep on top of things. So I was out in my back patio last night and just relaxing, and I had my iPad with me. I was like, I'm just gonna put on a movie, and I decided to put that one on. I put my headphones in, and I really enjoyed it. I can't wait to watch the next two. It's funny. Have you seen it? Have you seen that one?
I've watched 2 of the 3. I still need to finish up the third one, but I gotta say I was definitely pleased with it. It had a really good atmosphere to it. Visually, it looked really great. The masks were great, so I was overall happy with it.
Yeah, and it's funny because when the first one started in 1994, I was a senior in high school that year and was working at the mall, so, and it's funny, and they did a good job sort of making it seem like 1994. And
even with the music too.
Well,
they really
the
nailed
thing
it.
about the music, I love the music, don't get me wrong, but it was like changing every 2 seconds, and it was like, okay, this song, now this song, now this song, now this song, which part of me was like, okay, chill out. This isn't like flipping through the radio. Like, you don't have to cram every song that was ever played in 1994 in this movie. But the other part of me appreciated, especially some deep cuts, like they were showing, I mean, this maybe not a huge deep cut, but like Iron Maiden's Fear of the Dark, or even Sweet Jane. And so there were songs that I was like, oh, cool, they used that, and obviously Sweet Jane was in Natural Born Killers, which came out that year. And, they started off with Nine Inch Nails, which that was cool. But it really did put me in that sort of mode of being in 1994, although the kid being on the internet was a little bit like, I'm sure there were people online at that point, but even calling it internet and calling it like online, I felt was a little too forward thinking. I don't remember thinking of it that way back then, but I was never on line like that in 94. It took like 95, 96 before I was really getting like quote unquote online or the World Wide Web. I think that's what we would have called it at that point, right? But again, I'm not like crapping on it at all. Like, I thought it was actually super well done. I loved the story because it was very, like, part of me started nitpicking a little bit. I'm like, wait a minute, but this is like Fear Street, R.L. Stine. This is like teen stuff. This makes sense. It's all within that sort of feel. So I really enjoyed it. I'm actually going to look at my letterbox right now. I'm not trying to be rude here. I'm literally looking at my letterbox. I want to see, because sometimes I forget what movies I've watched recently. So I literally have to pull it up on my thing here. That's why I use letterbox, because it's easy. Trying to think anything newer that I've seen.
Yeah, I've seen, figure out this letterbox thing too. I hear about it, but I've never actually.
It's good just to log in with movies I've seen. I don't write a lot of reviews, but I'll like star them. Like, I'll review by the stars or whatever. And I don't know. I'm sometimes anal about like keeping track of certain things, and I like keeping track of the movies that I've watched and like counting how many movies I've seen. Like, I saw a ton of movies in April, but I only saw a couple in May, like only a few. I'm like, wow, it goes in waves for me. It's weird, like in terms of, I will say a movie that I've seen recently, and again, not horror, but maybe adjacent horror, which it's not really, but Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Yeah, I heard that's pretty good. It's got the kid from Indiana Jones, I think, in it or whatever.
Yes, yeah. And Michelle Yeoh and Jamie Lee Curtis, obviously. That movie, I didn't know a lot going in. I knew it was A24. I had seen like short clips in a small trailer for it, but I didn't really do any deep diving as to what it was about. I saw it was sort of like a limited press screening, like 3 or 4 days before it came out. I got to see it because I'm friend, and we work with a local theater and to do screenings on every month. So they invited me out that's how I was able to go. It blew my mind because I had no idea what this movie was going to be like, and it's unlike anything I've ever seen before in my life. I loved it so much. I can't wait to see it again.
Yeah, I've actually heard nothing but good things about that film, so it seems like seems pretty solid. Like I've heard no one talking.
It's so crazy and zany. Like if you don't look at anything, don't read anything about it, even if you do, it might not even help, because it might not even distract you from it, because it's such a crazy movie that you're almost like, what is happening? I don't know what it is, but I love every minute of it. It really sits with you at the end too. Like it got in my brain for a bit, and it stuck with me for quite a while. And I did see the Batman, which I loved. Thought that was incredible.
Yeah, I didn't really like Robert Pattinson as Bruce Wayne, but he was a good Batman. I just wasn't, I don't know, Ben Affleck and oh my God, I can't believe it.
Oh, and like Batman v Superman or Justice League or
no, why Christian Bale? There we go. I was like, why am I forgetting?
Oh, yeah. Of course.
Like, they were good Bruce Waynes, but Robert Pattinson was just kind of, I don't know.
I think it's hard because it's his second year and he's still young and they're doing a different kind of version of him. I agree with you, but the one thing I like about Batman is not tied to one perspective. So you can take Batman and make it you can apply almost anything to it, right? Like you can have a young Batman, an emo Batman. You can have like the Christian Bale playboy Batman. You can have like the kind of older but somewhat brooding Ben Affleck Batman, I feel like you could literally, it's just like a theme that you can apply to it. That's one of the actual reasons I liked it so much, is because like the newer one, and because I love the book, I love the older It. I was 13 when it came out, so it really hit me. But when the new one was coming out, it's set in the 80s. I'm like, okay, like Stranger Things, and the new look of Pennywise. At first, I was like, what the hell is this? This is horrible. At very first, when I first saw it, and then I grew to love it, and I love those movies. And I think you could do that every 30 years and make a new It with a new Pennywise and have the story be relatively the same with changes. They change it up obviously for the new one, but you can make it relevant for a newer audience by keeping it's like a lore now. It's like even like Michael Myers is turned into that, and even Jason. You can apply those to modern audiences and keep the same feeling that was in the beginning. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. I feel like they've transcended at that point.
Well, it's a good story that it works. I mean, they've done like I don't even know how many different Bruce Waynes with TV shows and the.
Oh my God, a ton. Look at Adam West. I mean, that was like zany Batman and Bruce Wayne.
Exactly. Yeah, no, it is a really interesting fact. Just coming up with all these different Bruce Waynes and stuff like that. For me, one movie that I actually watched recently, I saw Watcher, which is a new film that just came out recently. That was actually really good. I enjoyed it. It's a pretty simple story, but it was definitely like a very tense, kind of brooding. It was really good. And then a random one I threw on recently was The Wolf of Snow Hollow. Probably one of the weirdest werewolf movies I've seen. It's not really a werewolf movie, but I appreciate it. It was really good. So that might be something you might want to.
Yeah, I haven't heard of that one. I've heard of Watcher, but I know nothing about it. So I need to check it out. It's hard. Like, again, I go in waves of watching movies, and like sometimes you're just in the mood for something that you've seen 300 times because it's 9 or 9:30 at night, and I maybe want to stay up for a little bit longer, watch something, but I'm tired and I just don't want to think about anything new. And that's I know it's a poor excuse, but at the same time, it's like, it's true sometimes, I just want to put on something that it's a comfort movie that I can just relax to and not think about and just enjoy it because it reminds me of when I was a kid, or I just love, whatever. But there are so many great new films. I mean, anybody who says, there's no new good horror, or no horror movies being made, or no original horror movies being made, I'm like, you're out of your mind. Yeah. I mean, look at the stuff that comes out on Shudder. Look at all these other things. Like, yeah, we get reboots or reimaginings. Yes, Halloween Ends is coming out this year, and yes, we get all these other things, Firestarter or whatever. And that's great too. I love all those. But there is a ton of wonderful movies being made in lots of different countries too. It's not even just the US. And I just think as a fan, it's never been a better time, you know?
Definitely. I mean, there's just a lot of ways to access it. I mean, speaking of other countries, you have, I think, like the Sadness that's been getting a lot. I haven't seen it personally, but that's one that a lot of
Yeah,
people
I
are
haven't seen it
talking
yet, but
about.
I want to watch it. Yeah.
Fried Berry is a great film that I love. I don't know if you've seen that film.
I haven't seen it yet, but I keep
Should.
hearing about it.
You should. You should. It's
That was
bizarre as hell.
was that on Joe Bob last
It
season?
was. It was. It
I
was
gotta
a
watch
while
that
ago.
episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, I missed it, and I remember thinking, oh crap, because I don't always catch the show, which sucks. Like sometimes I'm just busy on a Friday night and I can't make it, but I always try to catch reruns wherever possible. And that was one I missed, but I need to go back and watch.
Well, you've definitely supported Joe Bob because you put out a crap ton of merch for him. So.
Oh yeah, like I'm so happy for him. Like we started working with him pre Last Drive-In. I mean, we had just talked to him about doing a shirt for Monster Vision, and then we had him out here for a weekend of we had him show the Warriors, and he did an amazing presentation. This was back in 2016. And I got to hang out with him all weekend. We drank a lot of bourbon and we smoked a lot of cigars together, and we hung out very late into the night the whole weekend. And he was amazing. And this was way before any talk of Last Drive-In came up. Even Diana Prince, who's the mail girl, Darcy, she messaged me because I posted something on Twitter or something, like him signing posters for us because we were giving away at the screening. She's like, oh my God, I'm going to meet him next week for the first time. I'm so nervous because I love him so much and he's a hero of mine or whatever. I'm like, oh, he's a great guy. And we kind of chatted back and forth. And then like a year and a half or whatever later, she goes, guess who's the new mail girl? And I was like, oh my God, because there was rumblings about there being a new show. And then I'm so happy for both of them, really, for what has transpired out of the Last Drive-In, and not for anything, but like being like watching that show on a Friday night. Like I remember I was in my early 20s when Monster Vision was on. So I would watch it on a Friday or Saturday night because I feel like it jumped nights here and there. But I felt like I was watching it with somebody, but I was more usually watching by myself. But with Joe Bob, it felt like I was watching it with a friend. Now you can watch it with him and thousands of other people that are tweeting at the same time. And it really feels like a community. And those movies get trending on Twitter, and there's this conversation and a very communal feel about it. Some of these movies I probably wouldn't have watched otherwise, but watching with Joe Bob and the rest of the mutant family made it such a wonderful experience. I only kind of wish it wasn't so late. I mean, starting at 9 and ending at like 2 in the morning sometimes gets a little, like, I'm literally half the time I'm like, oh my God, what's the second movie? I can't stay up. If I was in Pacific time, it'd be a different story. But I love the fact that it's late night here in the Eastern Coast, but at the same time, sometimes it gets a little too late even for me. And, sometimes it's hard, but I'm glad you can stream them whenever,
Yeah, it's very helpful. So I have to just mention really quick, I am a cheap bastard, so I have about 1 minute left because
I see it showing up in the upper left.
Yep. So I'm gonna wrap this up so it doesn't rudely just chop it.
Okay.
Again, my little channel is a Halloween thing, so I'm just gonna ask you really quickly. What was the last time you dressed up on Halloween and went out? Your
last Halloween. I do it every year.
Yeah.
I dress up usually as Michael Myers. I have like a kind of like a Frankenstein silicone mask that I use as well, that I have this outfit that I put on. But pretty much every year, my kids still go. I mean, my daughter's 15. She likes going out with her friends and hanging out. My son is 12, so he'll still go out with his friends. But yeah, I like dressing up as Michael and terrorizing kids all night. It's my favorite thing to do.
Nice. All right. Well, it's probably going to cut me off, so I'm just going to wrap this up. Thank you again so much for coming on and having a quick little chit chat with me this afternoon. It's still morning to me. I think it's almost 1 o'clock now. So, but thank you for this, and I'm going to post this up, and I really appreciate it, and look forward to giving you more of my money.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate having me on. Thanks again.
No problem, man. Thank you.
All right. Take care.